Hi, this is Greg Anderson, and this is the Living in Carver County podcast. It's an insider's conversation with the people who make Carver County the best place to live, work, and raise a family. My guest today is Dr. Kamruz Darabi. He has a private practice, Darabi Dermatology in Chaska, and he's got multiple offices. He's actually quite an entrepreneur. But Dr. Darabi, thank you for agreeing to be on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're going to start at the beginning. Walk me through how a guy from Cologne, Germany ends up practicing dermatology in Chaska, Minnesota. I think that's got to be kind of a winding journey that I think people would be interested in hearing about.
Yeah, good question, Greg. Sometimes I'm wondering myself how that happened. But to go back in time, I was in medical school in Germany, and it's all about role models and people that guide you in life, right?
Hmm.
So I was in medical school, and my older brother, Cameron Darabi, who's also a physician, went to medical school 4 years ahead of me. And he was a high school exchange student in the United States. He spent a year in New Mexico and Texas. And after he finished medical school, he went for his residency to Philadelphia.
Okay.
And he was ahead of me. And he was kind of my role model. And I followed his path to do the same thing. So I came to the United States for my postgraduate training in medicine. And I spent a year in Cleveland, Ohio, doing just biomedical research, working on in the lab. And then I did my intern year in New York City at Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx. Then I did another year of research at the Rockefeller University in New York. And after that, I moved to Columbus, Ohio to do my dermatology residency and fellowship at Ohio State University. And then I was looking for jobs after, the first few years of residency. Um, at that time, my brother was living in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and he had a very strong connection to the Twin Cities. He was coming to the Twin Cities a lot, and he had friends here. And I came and visited a couple times. And when I was job searching, Ridgeview Dermatology had a job opening. So I came, I interviewed, that was in 2012. And the funny story is I started talking to them in February of 2012. And for some reason, they didn't invite me to interview until May of that year. So when I came, the weather was nice. It was that unusual spring or winter that was really mild. So I remember vividly the guy who was driving me from the airport, from MSP to the car rental place, had shorts on. That was in May 2012, and he kept saying, "Oh, the winter was so nice. It was so mild. We were celebrating St. Patrick's Day in flip-flops." And I thought, sounds pretty good. It seems to be not as bad as everybody makes it sound. So then I interviewed at Ridgeview, and it worked out, and they recruited me, and I came to Carver County, started working uh, at Ridgeview in October 2012.
Okay.
And that was basically how I got to Minnesota.
All right. But you're got a very cosmopolitan background. You speak four languages. You've trained on three continents. I mean, you literally could set up practice anywhere in the world. What was the moment that you know that you wanted to, that you knew rather, that you wanted to start building your life here?
Yes. When I was job hunting, it's a big decision, right? It's important to, what are you going to do out of school? Where are you going to go? Because most of the time, you do end up spending most of your life there. Even though the first job is never the last job, but you kind of get rooted in the community. So when I was looking around, I was looking at the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, and what I even thought about going back to Germany, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
But what really, attracted me to Carver County or Minnesota or the Twin Cities was the job at Ridgeview was pretty unique. They allowed me to build a department for them. They didn't have a dermatologist at that time. So that was a unique opportunity to build something from the ground up.
Hmm.
And the second thing I liked was the community. So Carver County is pretty unique, as we all know. It's a very picturesque area with its rolling hills and natural beauty. It's at the urban edge, so it's not rural, but it's really not the city.
Hmm.
So that was very attractive to me too. Um, the proximity to the Twin Cities with all its, metropolitan offering is great, but at the same time, you have the peace and quiet of a nice suburban area, and the people are also very kind, um, educated, um, reliable, punctual, which is very important when you run a business where you have set appointments at a time. And if somebody shows up late or no shows, that throws the whole schedule
Sure.
uh, around. So the people, I would say, that was something that I didn't see in many other places I interviewed. The unique combination of metropolitan living, suburban living, and Ridgeview as an institution. It was a regional health system. It wasn't too big, it wasn't too small.
Hmm.
It was very personal. You knew the COO, you kind of knew the CEO, which doesn't happen at big places like the University of Minnesota or Mayo Clinic.
Sure.
So you're less of a number. That attracted me also to taking the position at Ridgeview.
Okay. And we talked about Ridgeview. I appreciate that. I think about you, there's a concept that I think about a lot in business. And the idea is something from a book called The E-Myth. And the idea is if somebody's really brilliant at their craft, at a particular skill, that the natural evolution is for them to go out on their own. And, so for you, for you to go out on your own and then realize, you're actually running a business. How did that kind of hit you that you had these additional roles beyond, the day-to-day practice of doing the tactical work
Mhm. You know, is this in relation to Ridgeview or to my own
on
personal
your
career?
own? Yeah, the transition from Ridgeview to your own. Sorry.
Yes. So how did that feel? I guess you're asking how did that feel to go from just being an employed physician to actually running a business?
Hmm.
So I'm not gonna lie, in the beginning it's pretty overwhelming. You were just used and trained and educated to be a physician, to see patients and do your craft. And
Hmm.
then when you go on your own, the first 3 to 4 months were very overwhelming. You're doing a lot of things that you have no idea about. As you know, healthcare is a very regulated space, so you have to learn all of that stuff. You have to be a human resources agent. You have to be an IT agent. You have to be a compliance and regulation person. You have to also be a clinical quality person, right? You have to set up everything from the ground, things that you
Hmm.
didn't even know, like as simple as, how do I sterilize surgical instruments? How do I order supplies? How do I um, design a space, right? That is
Hmm.
functional and serves the purpose of your workflow. So the learning curve was very steep in the beginning. And I would say the first 3 months, I was just thinking, oh my God, what did I do? But I think everybody in this position goes through that.
Yeah. I think that's universal across businesses. And, the idea is now all of a sudden you have all these different hats that you have to wear. Um, I'm guessing too, this is something that medical school did not prepare you for.
Not at all. No, it doesn't prepare you for any of this.
You mentioned something before about one of the attributes of Carver County being punctuality. That you're running that you've got an appointment centered business. When patients walk in initially, I mean, obviously they're thinking about their skin, like, hey, I've got this thing. Is this bad? Is this something I need to be scared about? And they've got no idea that behind the scenes, you're juggling a business, keeping the lights on, keeping people, making payroll, doing all those things. Beyond being on time, is there anything else that you wish that your patients understood about engaging with your practice?
Mhm. I think a couple of things. One is I mean, patients should understand that, we're also humans, right? And first of all, we always try to do our best, but sometimes our best is not good enough. And there are sometimes mistakes that happen. There are sometimes, omittances that happen. Like we could run late. We don't do that on purpose. Um, and
Sometimes you get some old guy talking about a podcast and it screws up your schedule.
exactly. Um, but the other thing I wish they would understand is also, you know, I mean, I would say most people do a good job, but it's very complicated to understand your health insurance correctly.
Hmm,
That is, I would say, the biggest friction point between a medical practice and their patients. How does health insurance actually work? You know, it's like no other insurance, to be honest. Most people don't know how their car insurance works. Most people don't know how their house insurance works. What is the deductible? What is covered? What is not covered? And now take that in health insurance and add not another layer of complexity to it,
mhm.
which is, the networks that, insurance companies now, force patients into. So you have to know if your provider is in network, if your plan requires a referral. All those things are difficult for people that are busy, they're running their lives. And there's, I don't think, also not great guidance from the insurance companies to
Sure.
explain things in detail for each individual insurance plan.
Yeah. No, I speak to that personally. I had a surgery and then they found out that I had a complication, so then I had to have something else. And then I start getting bills from all these different providers. The anesthesiologist, I get a bill from the hospital, I get a bill from the physician's practice. And I'm thinking, well, it's overwhelming. So I think that's a great point to make.
And you're a
Um,
smart guy. I mean, imagine, a high school educated or less than high school educated person.
Yeah, it's a challenge, that's for sure. So you're triple board certified in dermatology, Mohs surgery, and I can never say that correctly. Dermat,
Dermatopath
say that slowly?
dermatopathology.
Yes, which I'm told is very rare nationally. So can you help explain to people what that actually means for them in practical terms from a care standpoint?
Yes. Dermatology has different subspecialties. It's kind of like internal medicine, right? You got your cardiologist, you got your kidney doctor, you got your lung doctor. Dermatology is the same thing. So dermatology is the overarching specialty, and then there are subspecialties within dermatology. And one of them is Mohs skin cancer surgery. So a dermatologist can choose to acquire further training and skills to become a Mohs surgeon. And you can also become board certified in Mohs surgery as a dermatologist, in addition to be board certified as a dermatologist. So then you have two board certifications. One is your general dermatology, and the other one is your sub-certification in Mohs skin cancer surgery. So
Okay.
that's one. And then the other one is dermatopathology, which is basically, the person, say somebody takes a biopsy from your skin, they have to send it somewhere. Another
Hmm.
person has to look at the biopsy microscopically to see what's going on and what could be the problem of the tissue that was sampled. And that is the dermatopathologist who does that job. And again, it requires further training after your dermatology training and has also a board examination to acquire your board certification in dermatopathology. So those are the subspecialties of dermatology. There's one more subspecialty called pediatric dermatology,
Mm,
which is, I would say maybe the rarest subspecialty in dermatology. But that is not something we or I specialize in. I'm just a general dermatologist, dermatopathologist, and Mohs surgeon.
just an underachiever with only 3 certifications, huh?
I guess at one point I had to decide, hey, maybe I don't want to spend more than half of my life in school. I should
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
go to
exactly.
work.
Yeah, exactly. Time got bills to pay. A lot of people in Carver County or as you get out into the exurbs, whether it's Carver or Scott or, going further out McLeod, um, I think sometimes there's a bias that they still assume that they have to go to the cities, for anything serious. What are your thoughts on that? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it used to be like that, I think maybe 15, 20 years ago. But if you look at it now, over the past 10 to 15 years, you have healthcare hubs in Chaska, in Waconia. You got close to the metro in Chanhassen, multiple medical and dental specialists. And I can't think of a specialty right now that is not represented in Carver County, at least on a part-time basis.
sure.
If you look at even like neurosurgery, like they have a neurosurgeon, a brain and spine surgeon at Ridgeview now. I think the only thing that you really need to go to the city for is heart surgery.
Hmm.
And most patients go to Abbott Northwestern for that if they are in Carver County. But
Yeah.
anything else is represented.
Right. And then the cardiologists from Abbott have facility at 212, or they're taking patients there. So you've got
Mhm.
this connection to it. So I
Exactly.
agree. I mean, I kind of was hoping that's the way you'd answer it because I was friends with Bob Stevens, going back to the old Ridgeview days
Mhm.
and I know that was a really purpose, really a mission that they were focused on is making sure you could get world-class healthcare without having to travel, whether
Speaking of
that's
world-class, actually, Twin Cities Orthopedics is a world-class institution, and they have a strong presence in Carver County. They have their surgery center in Chaska. They also operate out of Waconia. They do all kinds of orthopedic surgeries, uh, joint replacements. It's amazing. And I see the patients, right? I see them here, and they all have their, surgeries done at Twin Cities
sure,
Orthopedics,
sure, sure.
and they have amazing outcomes.
Well, let's talk about seniors specifically, because that's a big part of the audience that I have and certainly in my day job. Whether they're in that life or whether, people listening are in that stage themselves or they're thinking about aging parents. What should people know about skin health as they get older that they're probably not hearing, from their regular doctor, assuming they are going to a regular doctor?
Yes, and thankfully, most older patients, and define older 60 and 60 plus, in Carver County are very health conscious. They're health educated. Um, I would say the number one thing that most people age 60 plus don't realize is how common skin cancer in fair-skinned individuals is. We have data from the Medicare data pool that shows that fair-skinned Medicare beneficiaries, which are people above the age of 65,
Hmm.
um, will get a type of skin cancer in male Medicare beneficiaries with a chance of 60%. So 2 out of 3
Wow.
male Medicare beneficiaries will get skin cancer.
Wow.
Um, with females, it's a little bit lower. Maybe it's 50%. So 1 out of 2 female Medicare beneficiary will get skin cancer. And it might have to do with men working more outdoor jobs and
Sure.
having had more occupational sun exposure.
Or guys resistant to skincare.
Sunscreen, yes. Be putting sunscreen on the skin, yes.
Okay. Um, all right. Uh, you know, there's a thing that's going on social media, where they'll have on like TikTok, or they'll have a physician and they'll say, okay, a dermatologist rating of something on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being fantastic, and 1 being terrible. So if you would indulge me, um, higher SPFs. So on a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of effectiveness, if should I get SPF 80 versus SPF 30 on a scale of 1 to 5? Is that a good thing or a bad thing to do?
It's not a bad thing to do, but let's go back to what SPF actually means. Then I can answer your question better.
Okay.
SPF, sun protection factor, basically the number means how long is it going to take you with that cream on your skin to burn versus having no sunscreen on your skin.
Okay.
So if you usually burn within 30 minutes, if you're in the sun, and you put an SPF 10 on your skin, that should, under ideal conditions, which means, you apply it thick enough, you apply it correctly, like they do in the laboratory when they test these things.
Hmm.
So if you burn within 30 minutes normally with that SPF 10 cream, you shouldn't burn until 300 minutes in the sun. So now extrapolate that to the number 30 or 50 or 80, right? So if you normally burn within 20 or 30 minutes and you wear an SPF 30, 50, or 80, that prolongs the time by 30, 50, or 80 times to burn. I mean, there's not enough hours in a day
Right,
to
right.
burn, right? So,
Even
but
even pasty Minnesotans won't burn in the dark.
yes, but um, that assumes you applied the cream exactly like it was applied during testing conditions in the lab, right?
Sure. Right,
Which
right.
most people don't.
Hmm.
And that assumes that the cream did not get rubbed off, did not get sweat off, did not get, you know, you
Washed
didn't
off in the pool, or
washed
yeah.
off in the pool, in the beach, in the water. So therefore, the recommendation of the American Academy of Dermatology is to start at least with a 30. That
Okay.
way, by the end of the day, by the end of the afternoon, if you're in the sun the whole day, you might still have 5 or 6 on your skin and you still have sun protection.
Gotcha.
Why don't they
Okay.
recommend 100? Because, it becomes less pliable, less acceptable, right? The more zinc oxide or titanium dioxide you put in the cream, the pastier it gets, the whiter it gets, and people hate that. So I think 30 or higher is a good recommendation that the American Academy of Dermatology has proposed. For most people, it should work.
Okay. Moisturizing lotion. Worth it? Not worth it?
Definitely in the winter in Minnesota when the air is so dry and cold, yes, absolutely. I use it on my legs, and the older I'm getting, the drier my skin gets. The oil glands don't work as well anymore, and definitely moisturize, yes.
Okay. For overall skin health, saunas and cold plunges. Good, bad, or just a fad?
Overall skin health. Sauna, yes. What does sauna do? It improves circulation to your skin. So
Okay.
that's good for your skin. It makes you sweat, so you purge toxins through your sweat. Um, and it's also a good cardiovascular exercise. You basically flush your blood volume from the inside of your body, from your organs to your skin, right?
Okay.
So when the volume goes down around your heart, because it's now more in the skin, the
Hmm.
blood supply to the skin goes up, your blood pressure drops and your heart works a little bit harder to keep your blood pressure up. And that is mild, for some people, moderate cardiovascular exercise.
Okay.
And, it's pretty easy to do. You can read a book and do some mild to moderate cardiovascular exercise.
Okay.
Now, cold plunge. Cold plunging, what it's supposed to do is it should lower your heart rate, right? But you have to stay in the water long enough for your heart rate to drop.
Okay.
And that is kind of a soothing, calming thing for your heart, for your cardiovascular system. And it is also supposed to reset your metabolism and also stress your system a little bit. So your body produces stress proteins or stress hormones that
Hmm.
shut down the damaged cells in your body and get rid of them. So you're kind of like cleansing the damaged cells a little bit that way to get rid of them. But you have to stay in the cold plunge long enough for that to happen. So
For that
just jumping in,
process to
coming quickly out isn't going to do it.
gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, we'll stop with that. But that was fun. I like, because there's so many things that they become so fatty, and then, it's hard to separate, and then you have people jumping on and fitness influencers and all this stuff. And, if
Mhm.
you spend any time on TikTok at all, there's all these rabbit holes that you get kind of put down. So, but speaking of social and tech and everything, I do want to share a little bit about how you and I got this conversation started about you coming in. And so kind of a little bit more about how I was wired. I was in your waiting room and I noticed you had a TV screen slideshow, and I started thinking like I do whenever I'm in a business is like, well, if I was here, how would I, what I do from a marketing standpoint? And when I told you that, what were you thinking? What did I hope I didn't offend you when I was start talking about the marketing.
No, no, not at all. But the one thing I was thinking, like, oh gosh, he's right. But that's one more thing for me to do now.
That's the burden of an entrepreneur.
Yes.
But then you pulled out your phone, you had a flex, you pulled out your phone and you showed me an AI avatar video that you did right there in the examiner room. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, 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 I'm trying, but there's not enough hours in the day to do everything.
So when you start thinking about, I mean, the fact that you're even aware of this type of technology and creating an avatar says that you're really thinking about technology. So as you think about your practice and sort of that evolution of the practice, how are you, what are some of your objectives in terms of better patient communication that you feel like, that you want to move towards?
Yes, you're mentioning something very important. In healthcare, patient communication is very important, right? It's all about that, not only when the patient is in the practice, but also when the patient leaves or before the patient comes in, to collect as much information as we can before the visit, so the patient's time spent in the clinic is actually minimized. You have less forms to fill out. There are less friction points and annoyances at the front desk. And also, when the patient leaves, there might be questions, right? There might be something that patient didn't think of when they were there, and they had a question after the fact when they go home. So we are trying to um, harness artificial intelligence as the next thing in our practice to assist with all of this, to automate the intake process with a AI agent that calls the patients or communicates with them via text message to collect as much information as possible prior to the visit. And also the same type of AI agent technology to assist with routine questions patients may have after the visit. Now, obviously, that's a very tricky, the tricky nuances between, medical advice versus answering general inquiries.
Hmm.
So the technology is, I think, good enough to be able to distinguish, okay, That's where I have to stop and I have to connect the patient to the practice to speak to a real person because this is getting a little bit too medical and gets into the realm of actual medical advice.
Sure. Yeah, that's going to be a fine line. I think I shared with you I had an ablation and I've been having issues with feeling like there's chest pressure. And so I had gone in and I was just getting curious. So I went on to one of the large language models and I started to put in my symptoms and it came back all caps, bold, call 911 right now.
Yeah.
So and I'm like, you may be having a heart attack. And it's like, well, no, I'd gone through I'd gone in and, had an appointment. But anyway, it's interesting the interplay between that. So now when people they're maybe not going to, what was the famous one that everybody was using to diagnose themselves online during the Google era? Um, WebMD.
Ah,
And now, of course, now that you start getting the large language models, the answers come back and they're much more complex. But it's nice that you've got some bumpers in place.
yes, yes. And
So,
we're already harnessing technology, we're actually pretty I would say avant-garde in our technology, and you may know that. We have, direct appointment scheduling to our website, so patients can actually see our schedule on our website and pick an appointment and book their time right there. They don't have to call, play the phone tag, be on hold, leave messages. We also have a HIPAA compliant patient messaging or communication platform where you can actually text us as opposed
mhm,
to calling, not getting hold of anybody. And we text you back in a secure way. So I would
mhm.
say that's really the one thing that we did since the beginning, since inception, since 2021. And I think a lot of practices have come on board with that now more recently in the last year or two. But, I think we were one of the first actually in Carver County to offer that.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, now you've been here for a number of years. Is there any kind of parting message that you want to give that people maybe that you'd like people to know? We used to call it the beer question. So if you were sitting down and we were just having a beer, is there one thing that you want people to know about either yourself or your practice or just dermatology in general? If when you get your moment to say to give that piece of information is there a message like that that you'd love to end with?
Yeah, I mean, about dermatology in general, I would say, the one advice I can give people is don't think a skin disease or a skin issue is not a big deal, right? To many people, they have maybe a rash for years and years. It's an autoimmune disease like psoriasis. It itches a little bit, it flakes a little bit, it looks unsightly, but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't put you out of commission. Take it seriously because many skin conditions do have consequences for your overall health. It's
Okay.
been proven, for example, that psoriasis, which is an inflammatory condition of the skin, causes enough damage in your system that it increases your risk for heart attack and stroke.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
Psoriasis, the more severe it is, the higher your risk of cardiovascular disease. Why? Because the inflammation in your skin, if it gets bad enough, severe enough, could get into your bloodstream and cause inflammation in the vessels of your heart, your brain, and throughout your body. And that could cause stroke and heart attacks. So that's the one thing that I tell people, like, don't think your skin is just an optical thing or, it just itches a little bit. It does affect your overall system. And the second thing I would like to, your second question about Darabi dermatology, kind of to conclude, um, a lot of people have perceived barriers about seeing a dermatologist because it is in some instances hard to see a dermatologist. For example, health partnering patients tell me it takes 6 months to see one of their dermatologists.
Mhm.
Or Ridgeview patients tell me it takes sometimes 2 or 3 months to see one of their providers. It doesn't have to be that way. Thankfully, private practices such as ours do exist, and the patient experience is usually more frictionless in private practice because we have access for patients. They can actually come and see us. Like you can see me next week if you want to see me. You
Fantastic.
can see our physician assistant Taylor the next day or in a couple of days if you have an urgent issue.
Sure.
Um, so it is possible to see people in private practice. We are available. Our colleagues are available. Take your skin issue seriously. Take care of it because God forbid it's a serious issue that compromises your overall health, like I mentioned for psoriasis, or God forbid that little mole that is changing is melanoma or something worse.
Sure. And generally, what I've read is that it's earlier is always better.
Always, especially when it comes to skin cancer,
Yeah.
because melanoma, is one of the deadliest human cancers. But when it's caught early, which the majority of cases are, it's 99% curable with a simple surgical excision with local anesthetic.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a good warning to end on, or a good bit of advice. I just want to thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy, and I really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
All right, I'm going to stop recording.